Hi, welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly recap from Reboot, Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, and for the second to last full week of the session, it was kind of a strange week with not a whole lot happening, but some theater.
There was a lot of activity.
That's true.
But I wouldn't say there was a whole lot of
Productivity
necessarily, yeah.
All right, well, we do have a couple things we haven't heard about in a while to tell you about. The Illinois Senate passed this week fantasy sports legislation, which would put them under the auspices of the Illinois Gaming Board, but it's not really gambling.
Right. And it would essentially set up a new category that would deal just with online fantasy sports. And because right now the sponsors of this bill held a press conference back in the fall and said, right now there's no consumer protections because this stuff isn't covered under the gambling law, and that could be potentially a big problem. And then on the operating side, you essentially have, according to Attorney General Lisa Madigan, you had gambling operating without any oversight from the Gaming Commission.
Right, so the Fantasy Sports Trade Association has been heavily present in Springfield lobbying for this, and they issued a statement with some small operators out in the suburbs saying this is going to bring stability to the industry and let them grow and create jobs.
Yeah, they also say it's, we think of FanDuel and DraftKings because that's all you ever see when you watch sports on TV, but they like to point out that there are a lot of other smaller operators and they employ a lot of people. And this is something where you've got the technology just totally outpaced the ability of government to regulate it. We're seeing this in Chicago with Airbnb and Uber, where the apps caught on and they're so popular, and city government doesn't quite know how to handle it. It's been the same way with not just with Illinois, but it's all over the country. Different states have had different rulings. I think in Nevada you can't use these whatsoever because the gaming industry there, the established gaming industry, has kept them out essentially. And Nevada has said that this is gambling and it's not allowed. New York, they're battling it out now.
Right.
So it's kind of going state by state trying to define what this is, but you can't. I just think that the market, the demand for it is so great. These things grew exponentially that you're not going to just take it away from millions of people.
It's kind of trying to put the cat back in.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the sponsor, Representative Zalewski, said in his press conferences, that there's just too many people. There are just too many people doing this for us to come in and say, that's it. It's the end. It's gambling. So.
And the release actually said, I thought this was interesting. There are 2 million or more people in Illinois.
I know.
Participating in fantasy sports.
Yeah.
And that Illinois is the state with the third highest number of people playing fantasy sports. Okay. And then the other thing that passed the Illinois Senate this week was automatic voter registration, which essentially would say that when you go to renew your driver's license, you are registered unless you specifically
say don't register me,
choose to opt out. So Senate President John Cullerton, Democrat from Chicago, said that this is actually going to save county governments and election administrators money. That there'll be less that they'll have to deal with as far as registering people. And he encouraged the House to pass it. I
think this one had 42 Senate votes, so it passed with a pretty
strong majority.
Yeah, pretty strong majority.
More Republicans.
Yeah, I think there were 6, so a smattering of Republican support.
But there is still seems to be mostly Republican concern that this is going to increase voter fraud.
This comes up, and this has come up all the time nationally. This has been, it's a Republican thing that you make. It just seems like anytime there's an effort to make registration to vote easier, you get a lot of Republican opposition because they say, no, this is going to increase voter fraud. And on the Democratic side, they say, well, if you start putting in these ID laws that you're going to get people who can't exercise their right to vote because they can't produce the proper picture ID. Frankly, I don't understand the opposition to this particular bill because, and we also had an announcement this week from Jesse White that it's going to get, they're putting in a
Right.
lot more security about when you get your driver's license.
Right.
So it would seem to me that this would be a good fix for everybody all around, because it's going to be very hard to get a fake driver's license if you're automatically
You would hope.
registered when you get your driver's license. There you go.
All set.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have the ongoing impasse between the governor and Speaker Madigan. There was actually the second only this year meeting of the governor and the 4 legislative leaders this week. And when House Republican leader Jim Durkin emerged, he actually said he felt more optimistic and thought there had been a little bit of a breakthrough
Right.
because Speaker Madigan agreed to assign some of his members to a non-budget
Right.
issues working
And
group.
Mike Madigan says that these things like redistricting reform and term limits and workers' compensation reform and property tax freezes, all that stuff, those are not part of the budget discussion. We can talk about those later. We need to address the budget right now. And of course, Governor Rauner's view is those things are very much about the budget because they are about improving the economy
Right.
in the long haul. So it was a bit of a breakthrough this week that you saw Madigan saying, okay, I'll put people
People on this
together
committee.
to talk about these issues. And the implication is maybe that Rauner is okay with treating them separately from the budget. We haven't heard that yet, but it would seem like maybe they're
Yeah.
leaning to something like that.
And so House Republican leader Jim Durkin even mentioned specifically that Speaker Madigan had expressed a willingness to talk about pensions, about a property tax freeze, and about workers' compensation reform. But then the Speaker turned around and marched onto the House floor, introduced an amendment on a bill to add another $227 million to the MAP grants
MAP
that
grants.
college students
Right.
need, and to fund it directly out of general revenue funds. In other words, with money that doesn't
That we don't
exist
have,
according
because
to
we
the
don't have a
governor,
budget, right.
because there is no budget. And so it looked like another political trick box he was trying to put the governor in. And then the
But it
very
wasn't as bad as last time when he went straight out. They all got together, and then he
Yeah.
went straight to the House floor and gave a speech about how this is the epic battle of our lives. And so I guess there's improvement there. All he was doing this time was passing a bill that he knew that the governor would veto if it ever got to his desk.
So instead, he waited till the next day, and then he went out in front of 8,000
Yeah.
members of AFSCME, the state's largest public employee union, and gave a speech that was met with resounding cheers.
He pumped his
And the
fist,
normally reserved speaker,
which was pumping his fist and you doing like a call and response to the crowd that was gathered there. And it was a big crowd, and I would say that, I mentioned at the top that there was a lot of action, maybe not a lot of progress. This would be the big rally that they had on Wednesday in Springfield was really impressive. The Secretary of State
Yeah.
Police estimated that there were 8,000 people there, and that's a lot of
quite a
people
turnout.
to fill up that state capitol lawn, and a lot of very raucous speeches. And it was a big show of force. The governor wasn't even in town at the time, but it was a big show of force. And if nothing else, it was symbolic to show that, boy, huge differences still exist between Rauner and the unions. And it wasn't just unions; it was unions and it was groups associated with labor.
right?
And all of this revolves around the big contract negotiation that's going on right now between the governor and the largest union of state employees, which is ASPE Council 31.
Or
And-
not going on, as the
Right,
case may be.
right, and then that's in court as well. They're battling that out just to try to get, they want to get this resolved, and Governor Rauner wants an impasse declared so
right.
that they can move on and a decision gets made. So that's extremely, extremely contentious there, and I think that demonstration, if nothing else, it just showed the sheer power of numbers that were involved.
and that Madigan certainly has solidified his own union support and campaign funding.
Oh, sure.
So it is an epic battle still, and not much hope for any resolution anytime soon.
But next week is the last
Full week.
Is the last full week, and
Memorial Day holiday is the last day, May 31st.
yep. So that's what they're up against. So we've seen this before, where budgets get done in the last, the waning hours of
24
the
hours,
session.
yeah.
But what we haven't seen before is where you've gone an entire year prior with no budget, and now you're trying to figure out possibly a 2-year budget with all of these things that the turnaround agenda and Madigan and his non-budget issues and all of that in play. We haven't seen that before, so we'll be watching.
That is it. Illinois remains the only state without a budget only in Illinois. Tune in next week. Thank you.